Well, thank you all for hopping on today. We're excited to have you here for one of our entrepreneurial educational workshops. My name's Cameron Law, and I'm the Executive Director of the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. We at the Carlson Center, we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, community, and support to enable founders of all backgrounds to explore and launch their businesses. And we have this clear mission to make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region. And how we've really gone about mobilizing and supporting our entrepreneurs is through this continuum of support. And so we look at one, creating these types of Discover programs where you get to learn about the entrepreneurial process, connect to resources, and then we have our build programs.
Apagado todo yo.
No. I'm going to mute you there. Awesome. And then our build programs are all about really providing you with the tools and mindsets and frameworks to go and about building your business. And then we also have some launch programs to help you access customers and go about scaling. So today is one of our ecosystem partner workshops where we're providing you with some amazing content to learn about how to take your startup into a global market, but really looking at it through the lens of a product and service design. And so I'm really excited to partner with the World Trade Center of Northern California. I am a proud board member of this organization. They're making a tremendous impact across Northern California and really connecting entrepreneurs to global markets. And with us today is Kevin Mather, who is the president and CEO of the World Trade Center of Northern California. So he'll be leading us through our workshop. Today, we would ask if you remain on mute during the presentation portions. We will be opening up for Q&A, especially at the end, but if you do have questions as you go, please feel free to use the raise hand feature or throw your question in the chat and I'll help facilitate that into Kevin. And just kind of getting familiar with the chat, I'd love if everyone kind of shared in the chat feature who you are, and if you have a LinkedIn, maybe share your LinkedIn and what you're excited to learn about in terms of our workshop here today. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Kevin, who has all the sharing privileges, and we'll get started. So the last thing is this will be recorded, so we will be sharing that as well as a PDF of the slides that are shared. So take it away, Kevin.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And so, as Cameron said, I'm with the World Trade Center in Northern California. And what we focus on really is providing education, resources, and connections to people in Northern California. My focus and emphasis really is on that international business, which is what my background is. We do two things.
Real quickly, you're in presenter view, just FYI.
Come on.
You're in the presenter side, so
yeah.
Giving you that heads up.
Thank you. So let's do this. Let's do a new screen, new share. We'll go there. Good?
You're good to go.
All right, thanks. So we really focus on two things. We do international business programs, and today is really a piece of that, where we're trying to expose more companies and entrepreneurs to the idea of going global and what that means. And then we also actually run a diplomacy and international exchange program for the US State Department, which is really fascinating. We host 1,000+ people internationally a year. And there's an amazing way to learn more about the globe and about issues around the globe. And so if you're interested in either of those things, definitely make sure to reach out to us. So let me just kind of give you a little bit of my background and how I got to here. And so my career path is I actually started out in life to be a carpenter. When I was a kid, I was fascinated watching carpenters build houses, especially people that cut roofs. You know, they seem to me to be the rock stars of the carpentry world. And so I decided that's what I was going to do after high school. And along the way, I met somebody who became a mentor. And he convinced me that I needed to go back to school. And he said, go get an engineering degree. And that way, if you still want to be in the trades, you're an educated tradesman and you'll have more opportunities. And so I did. And then once I graduated, though, I wasn't ready to go straight to work. So my wife and I did what seemed at the time the only sensible thing. Was we packed our backpacks and we spent 6 months traveling through the South Pacific. And that really excited and ignited my love of international travel and a desire to see and understand more about the world, and ultimately really led me into the international business world. So, but after coming back to the US, I worked in the semiconductor industry down in the Bay Area, a company called KLA. Fabulous company, great technology, but a couple of years into it, I knew it wasn't for me. And so I did what at the time seemed like the only intelligent thing. I went traveling again. And this time I went to South America. My wife and I put a 10-month-old baby boy into a backpack and wandered around South America for a couple of months. And what happened were two things. One, I fell in love with Latin America, but two, it drove my development of Spanish as a second language, which really ultimately became kind of key to me getting into the international business space. After coming back from traveling, I did a startup company for 3 years here in the Sacramento area. I call that my practical MBA, and found out how hard startups are, and had to make a decision whether I stayed in a purely technical role or stayed in that business path. And so I stayed in the business path, but with a technical company that made lab equipment for science education. And because I spoke Spanish, they asked me if I was interested in managing Canada and Latin America and Spain. And so I got started doing international business, and then figured out that this was what I was born to do. And from there, I was recruited on to the board of the World Trade Center in Northern California. So what I'm going to share with you today is really what I learned from this 24 plus year process in international business, helping a lab equipment manufacturer build international distribution and sales. So big question is, why go global? And it really should be a strategic decision, and it should be designed to give you a competitive advantage. And you can do this on both the import side and the export side. And it can be about either goods, physical things that you're going to import or export, or services that you import and export. But think about global expansion as part of your overall strategic business plan. And there's great reasons to do it. On the importing side, why might we import for our business? Well, because you might be able to get better cost of raw materials, or lower component costs or finished goods costs. So cost can be one of them. It can also be because you can get better supply, faster delivery times, all of which can lead to competitive advantages. Let's say that you're a startup or a company that you have an idea, but you don't necessarily have design and manufacturing capability. And so you can effectively import that capability by working with offshore contract design and manufacturing firms. So this goes to that make or buy decision that a lot of startups and small businesses face. Do I try to build this and make this part of my capacity, or do I just simply buy that capacity? And so contract design and manufacturing can be one of those things that you can effectively import. I use the word import because you're sending dollars overseas for either a good or a service. So that's effectively you're importing that capacity and ability. Software development capabilities, web development capabilities, also things that you can effectively import or take advantage of on a global basis. And then there's unique product features or brand cachet. On the export side, most companies go into exporting because they want to increase revenue. And that can be a very good reason to go. I would say one of the benefits of diversifying revenue and having revenue from overseas is that you become more durable. Effectively, if you have domestic business and you have international business, you have more legs to the stool. And I'll give you a very specific example. When I was in that lab equipment business, during the housing crisis, the domestic market in the United States was a train wreck. And that wasn't because we didn't have good people nor great products. It was because the US economy was in shambles and the business just wasn't there. Our international business, though, was booming. And we had some of the best years that the company ever had because of international business. And instead of laying people off, we were working double shifts in the factory to get projects built and out the back door. And so it really made that company far more resilient in the face of a very difficult time. And the data shows this. There's also times when there are unique market opportunities that are available to you. And then the other thing is international competition forces you to get better. If you're competing against the best of the planet, you are going to have to get better and hone your skills, your product, your service, and everything else. It's a great reason to do it. And I'll tell you, it's fun. I mean, I love it. So quick now, so I'd ask everybody to type in the chat window. This is a quiz. So tell me, what does everybody think this is a map of? Just take just a couple seconds, and then Cameron, if you can read out any answers that come up.
Okay. So yeah, feel free to use that chat feature to guess what you think this is a map of. We can, I wonder if come up with an award on the spot if someone gets it. Is there any?
About 5 more seconds.
We haven't got any. Let's throw some guesses in there. What is this a map of? Some type of export. All right, we didn't get any. We got one. We got the 2 guesses were some type of export, prime country relationships, and secondary color designated, water, top trade partners.
Okay. Well, it actually turns out it's the countries that are metric or mainly imperial and mixed. And so this is who uses what kind of tools and what kind of hardware. So if you're a company that makes a physical mechanical product or that has mechanical parts to it, one of the things that you need to think about is whether you're going to design and manufacture with metric components or whether you're going to use SAE like we do here in the United States. And it becomes a question of think about spare parts, think about tools, think about the cost of international shipment of warranty and replacement parts. And so there are viable examples of companies that do both, but it's something that you should be thoughtful about. The company that I worked for had started out as a domestic-only company focused on universities, US universities, and had a lot of equipment that was already designed, several hundred products. And they started exporting them, and lots of them used US hardware that was a 1/4 inch diameter and 20 threads per inch. They call it a 1/4-20. And so what we found is we had to take and give away a lot of 1/4-20 hardware because it's a lot harder in Ulan-Ude, Russia, to find a 1/4-20 replacement than it is here in Sacramento down at the Ace Hardware. So just think about that stuff, okay? Now we're just going to take a look real quick at some considerations if your product is going to need power, right? And lots of products in our world need power every day. So first, let's take a look at, and I'll have to switch windows. There we go. Let me know when that comes up.
You're on the IEC page.
Perfect. Okay. And so this is the International Electrotechnical Commission. So this is kind of a fun website. So if you've got a product that's going to need to plug into the wall, you can kind of come here, or if you're going to go traveling, this is a fairly fun place. And so along the bottoms, we've got all these different plug types. And this is obviously the United States. And so you can click on a plug type and see where on the planet do they use that type of plug. Or you can say, now you'll notice that we here in the United States live on 120, but there's parts of the world where when you plug in the wall, it's 100 volts, 110, 115, 127, 220, 230, 240. So there's a wide range of electrical systems out there. Just quick question. One of our two nearest neighbors actually is on 127 volts. Anybody got it? Can tell me who generates at 127? Okay, that'd be Mexico. So Mexico's electrical system is actually 127 volts. Don't ask me how they got to 127. Then the other thing you can see is that here, for example, in Europe, that a lot of the world is using this C-type plug, and it turns out that it's 230 volts and 50 hertz. And so the thing to be aware of here is just that we in the United States are so used to a large domestic market. Everything is 120, and we have this plug type. And if you're going to design a product or service and you're going to export it, then you need to be aware that there's a lot of other things that are out there. So I'm going to go. Am I back on?
You're back on electrical.
Okay. So the other thing is that there's no single global standard for electrical certification. In the US, we use UL. In the European Union, it's CE. Canada, it's called CSA. South Korea, KC. Japan, PSE. China, CCC. And you can see all the different symbols that are on there. And so it can become kind of daunting to figure out, how do I deal with this? Because my product needs power. And so one of the things that a lot of companies do, and a lot of products that you've got in your home do, is they use AC adapters if possible. So what's an AC adapter? It's those power bricks that you get with your cell phone, your laptop. Pick an electrical device that you've got. And so what you can do is, you'll notice that, for example, on the adapter on the left, the input range is 100 to 240 volts, and it works with the US and in Europe. So in other words, you can buy and source bricks that help you deal with this whole issue of voltage and plug type very simply, and somebody else has already done that certification work for you. Now, if there's any electronic engineers on the call today, I know that you already know this, right? But AC adapters are really your friend in this way. And the other thing that's nice about some of these is that you can take, and they also come with different plug types to where you get the product. It's qualified for multiple countries and includes multiple plug types in it that you just swap out. And so from both a design perspective, and then in terms of inventory, warehousing, product configuration, these AC adapters can really simplify your life and make the whole certification process a lot easier. Now, if you plug into the electrical mains, and when I say mains, that's plugging into the wall, cord sets make it a lot easier to configure for different countries. Now, you'll notice this is a power adapter for a computer on the right-hand side, and you can see that the cord set plugs into it. Probably everybody's computer came this way. Those manufacturers do this because that adapter, take a look at the adapter on your computer, and you'll see all these different symbols where that adapter is certified for use. And then they can just change out the cord set and have the right plug ready to go for different countries. So it's a very easy way to address this issue, but it doesn't always address everything. So, okay, we've got another quiz question coming up, Cameron. Let me go there. All right. If somebody can type into the chat window, does anybody know who this is? Any guesses? Random guesses are perfectly acceptable.
Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan, good guess. I like it. He's related to what, 1 in 5, supposedly 1 in 5 men on the planet are direct descendants of Genghis Khan? Any other question? Any other guesses?
Just 2 for Genghis Khan. So that's the majority.
Well, his name is Harald Blattant, and he was a 10th century Danish king who united the tribes, the fragmented tribes of Denmark, and some say also up into Sweden. And his last name, Blattant, translates to Bluetooth. And so the symbol for Bluetooth devices is a combination of his initials in the runic script that was used at the time. So the H for Harold and the B for Blattant, and those two were combined together to come up with a symbol for Bluetooth. Now he was called Bluetooth, and some say it was because he had a dead tooth that was kind of a gray blue in color. Others say it was because he ate a lot of Bluetooth or a lot of blackberries and blueberries, and his teeth were stained because of that. You get to make your choice as to what it was. So the engineers that were working on Bluetooth certification and developing the standard and putting this together decided to call it Bluetooth because Bluetooth technology allowed them to take and unite all these different separate peripheral devices, similar to the way Harold had been able to unite all of the different kingdoms of Denmark. That's how they came up with a name of calling it Bluetooth and the symbol. So not only do you learn something about international business today, you've got an excellent trivia question that you can take and stump your friends with, okay? So really the question would be, why do we care about this? If you're thinking of a product that is going to use Bluetooth, you've got to be thinking certification. Okay, when you think about exporting products, certification will be one of the things that you have to think about. And I'm talking really about, kind of leaning a little bit towards the electronic and software today, just because of the nature of California and what we do and some of the other startups that we see. So if your product uses Bluetooth, it will most likely require certification to be sold in a lot of countries, and that requires lab testing and paperwork. The other piece of this is that products that plug into the electrical mains also will require certification, which means a testing lab. Now, the pro tip is engage a certification company to design an efficient strategy. Let's say that your business plan says, okay, over the next 5 years, we're going to expand into 7 international markets where we think we've got a really good chance for growth. Tell them that, share with them the product information. They can help you design the strategy that says, here's the test you need to do, and here's the documentation and the paperwork we need to prepare to maximize the number of countries that you can qualify for the same dollars. So this is something where it really makes sense to buy that expertise and to go outside and have somebody help you with this. Now, a lot of people talk about doing business in the EU, great market. And you've probably all seen the CE mark that comes on it. Now, CE signifies products that have been assessed, as you can see, meet health, safety, environmental protection. Not everything that's sold in the EU needs to bear CE marking. And you can do what is called self-declaration. And many, many companies can do this self-declaration. What it says is that we've taken and we've looked at it, and we know that we meet the requirements to do business in the EU. And there's a hyperlink here, and we'll just take a quick, let me change the share real quick. It talks about CE marking. And the thing that I would look at is for manufacturers, it talks about really the process you have to go through, and they list all of the areas. So if you're a medical device startup thinking about going into Europe, you want to take a look at this early on. If you're doing explosives for civil use, definitely need to be CE marked. And so this will talk to you and help you to understand what products and what's going to be needing CE marking. This is another place. I'm going to go back to, this is another place where I would really recommend that you get an outside consultant that knows this forward and backwards. They can advise you, and some of these testing and certification labs can certainly do this. They can advise you on how to do this really efficiently. There's a small company here in Sacramento makes equipment that helps to pick up trash cans and dumping them into larger dumpsters. And they've got a potential piece of business in Turkey. And if they do that, they will need to do the CE self-certification for importation and distribution in the EU. So what I wouldn't do is I wouldn't just simply ignore it if you're going to do business in the EU. You want to do your due diligence and know, do I have to do that? Now, the other thing about the EU to know is, hang on a second. Okay, there's what's called WEEE and RoHS, and this is really waste electrical and electronic equipment. There's laws mandating the recycling of electrical and electronic equipment, and also what can be used in the manufacture of electrical and electronic equipment. And this really is going to apply to consumer products, household products, anything that is a cell phone or that is electronics or electrical equipment. And so once again, there's a lot of information out there that'll help you know exactly what you have to do to be able to deal with the EU. Let's kind of switch gears to a little bit about software. Before we move on, any questions? And I know this is kind of a quick flyby. Any questions so far on any of the stuff we talked about?
So we don't have any in the chat yet, but if there are any questions, we're making space for a quick pause here. Feel free to unmute and ask your question or throw it in the chat if you'd like me to bring it in. So we'll give it maybe 10 more seconds. All right. Well, as we continue on, if questions do arise, feel free to throw them in the chat or private message me, and I will make sure that we get a pause and bring them in.
Great.
Go ahead,
Kevin. Any companies or any folks online right now that are thinking about doing any sort of startup or companies that will be developing software? Yeah. Okay, Daniel, anybody? Okay. So let's just kind of think about some considerations for software if you're going to go internationally. Not all software products have to be translated. I use the expression localized. If you're dealing, depends on the target demographic of who you're doing business with. They may accept English software without issue. Now, in the education world where I was, university level physics instructors, these are PhD physicists that many of them studied abroad. They wrote and read and spoke English fluently. So English software was not an issue at that level. But dealing with secondary education, high school level, middle school level, then software, we needed to start translating it. And so if you are going to be thinking about going internationally, carefully consider who your market is and whether or not you'll need to translate it. If so, then avoid hard coding text strings into the software wherever possible. When the company I was with first started translating software, the way it had been developed was that all of the text strings that were shown in the software were hardwired into the code. And they had to go back and completely rebuild the structure of the software to enable us to start translating and developing the software for other markets. And so that was this huge redevelopment effort. Whereas if they had thought about it and developed it from the beginning as an external resource file, they could have saved some time and energy. There's a lot of software systems that use embedded help systems or online help systems that are a part of the software. Be careful here, because in many cases, the size of those files can be far larger than the actual software. I've seen cases of that where the help system and the number of words in the help system was several times the amount of text that was in the software to be translated. Software translations can cost anywhere from 10 cents to 25 cents a word, depending on who your translator is. So When you start talking about really large documents and large word counts, you know, the cost can go up really quickly. And then also make sure that text boxes, the physical layout in the software, accommodate translations. English is a really compact language in terms of the number of characters required in many cases. Other languages are not as compact and efficient. An example, welcome to our site in English, 19 characters including space. In Spanish, bienvenido a nuestro sitio, 25 characters. So there's 6 characters more to say the same thing, right? And that's almost 33% larger. So let's take a look at a piece of software, and I'll show. Now, this is a piece of software company I used to work for called SparkView. Notice a couple of things. One, look here on the left where it says Open Pasco Experiment and see the length of the text box there, okay? We're going to go in here. Now, we are in English. So let's talk about that idea of having external text resource files to swap languages. So I'm going to choose a different language. And now I can pop up and choose the language that I want. Do I want Danish, German, English? 3 different versions of Spanish, French, Italian. So I'll take Spanish and Latin America and say, okay. And so we've just told the software, taken now, when you restart, grab the resource file for, let me see here. Oh, I'll restart screen sharing. Sorry about that.
We had a good addition from Robert in relation to the languages. So for Asian languages, designing for DB. Oh, sorry, when you shared, I lost it.
Double
for
byte.
DB, yeah, double byte character sets will help with translations and regionalization of UX systems. So.
Yeah, and then if you're going to go into do either, there's also right to left languages that you should consider if you're going to go into the Mideast as well. Very definitely. So notice that now we've relaunched the software. Everything now it's come up in Spanish. And so here we were able to take and just access an external resource file to switch the language quickly and to bring it up. But now notice down here, notice that this says, abrir un experimento creado por Pasco. Okay, open the Pasco experiment. But look at how much larger the space requirements are in Spanish versus English. And they actually are truncating part of the text string. This goes to that whole thing about the size of text boxes when you're developing software. This also, frankly, this should be edited to where you're not truncating. So this is where you have to have somebody go through the software and verify everything. The other thing let's talk about is help systems. Those online help systems here, what they've done. Let me show you. I should. Is they actually reference an external web page. It's showing the SparkView web page, yes?
Correct.
Yeah. So instead of having the help system embedded in the software, obviously the device has to be online, but what they do is they take you to an external web page. The strategy here could be that you can embed translation widgets from Google or pick your favorite company out there. There's lots of them. Or if you have international distribution partners, they can take and assist you in translating and localizing the content for their market to where it can come up and they can have access then to the localized content. But it's a way to take and keep that out of the software itself. Okay, so we'll go back there. I need more windows and screens open. Okay. The other thing to think about in software is that translations need to be maintained with changes to the source code. If you do feature additions, if you have bug fixes, and if those are going to be reflected in the user interface, then you have to have a strategy that says, how are we going to maintain this going forward? User manuals may also need to be translated as well and need to be in sync with the source documents. This is just an ongoing thing that you just kind of need to build into your overall business process and your strategies. The other thing is how are you going to train software users? And one of the things that you can do, I would suggest, is take and let me change my share, is go in and develop where you turn on closed captioning. Because then with closed captioning, what you can do is you can do a training video in English, give access to everybody to the text streams. They can take and they can translate it and upload a localized version of it as well. That way, the effort that you put into doing it one time can be leveraged across multiple languages by turning on that closed captioning within YouTube. That can be a very effective strategy to get things done. Okay. And then the other thing is to just recognize that the app stores, Apple, Google, require testing of software and verification before being posted. So if you have multiple languages and they're not all part of the same executable, that means every time you change a language, you will have to get that reviewed before posting, right? And it just adds more complexity to your business processes. Something to think about. Now, the other thing, let's just take a couple of quick minutes for some customer service considerations. First, the world's a big place and there's a lot of time zones out there. Was that a question from Robert?
I did not see a question.
Oh, maybe he was just waving. Okay. World's a big place and a lot of time zones. And so we're based here in California. So if you're going to do business internationally, put some thought into how are you going to handle those time zone differences. And one of the approaches that I'm going to suggest really makes sense is utilize technology and the web as much as you can for self-help and self-service. Users manuals, product availability, order status, weights and dimensions, everything that you can take and make available to a potential customer overseas that they can gain access to on their time zone is to your benefit. The other thing I would suggest on your webpage, even if you don't translate your webpage, build in a local, one of the translation widgets. It's not perfect, but they get better all the time. These machine learning systems are getting better. And at least you're showing an effort to try to help people and give them the opportunity to access information in their language. The other thing that you can do is depending on the size of the company and as you grow, let's say that your primary market is going to be Spanish language software into South America. Okay, so South America is +4 +5 hours ahead of us, depending on time of year, +4 to 6, depending on time of year. So you could actually stagger and have your customer service person available earlier that's going to manage Latin America, to where think about how you're going to operate and handle those work hours if you need to be able to respond to somebody same day, same time in their time zone. The other strategy for this is, depending on the product, your local business partners in country become the first line of customer service because they speak the local language, they're located there, they understand the customs and everything else. If you're going to go through a distribution model, definitely think about empowering your local partners to be your face in your customer service in country. And that really kind of brings us to this topic of, of language. It's one of the things that I think makes international business international so fun, is you get to learn other cultures, languages, and to experience that through your business and through travel. English is the dominant language of international business. But if you have bilingual staff, if you make the effort to learn a second language, it goes a long way, because it shows that you're really trying to be that international business and to meet people in their country and not expect to do everything in English. That's a big one. And I think it's about the culture that you express of your company and the way you want to do business with them. And then finally, I'll just say thank you. Definitely, I encourage everybody to take a serious look at going global with their business, whether it's importing inputs to your business or whether it's taking a look at exporting. There are just fundamental skill sets and building blocks that you need to learn to do it and to do it successfully. And there's a lot of folks out there that can help you. World Trade Center Northern California is part of what we do. And we love working with companies and helping them to figure out how do they become successful with international business. So here's my contact information. And then also that diplomacy program that I spoke about. If you're interested in potentially having a chance to interact with folks from other countries and cultures to build your knowledge about different regions of the world, maybe as part of your international business expansion, reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you and share with you what we do. With that, I'll open it up for any questions.
All right, so we got about 18 minutes or so for questions, and thank you, Kevin, for running through that. Just to reiterate, we will be sharing the recording as well as the PDF that you can access some of those hot links as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise that hand or unmute and bring your question into the space. All right, we got one, the Business Geek Mix. MX.
Hi, Monse Moreno. Thank you for the opportunity. I have a question. In the case of services, what would you say that will be the first step or the first filter before moving the company to another country? For example, I will have to first check the legal requirements, or before I will have to look for the marketing and check if the market is the correct market for me. What will be the first steps in order to check other countries for the business that we want to export?
Sure. What I would do is I would start with the market assessment. And so depending on whether you're exporting goods or services, what I would do is there's a way to look up what's called a harmonized code. And these are codes that are used worldwide to say what you're exporting or importing. And then there are databases and engines that we can look at and find countries that are buying and importing that product. And from there, you can look at things like, okay, so we have native Spanish speakers on our staff, and what are the characteristics of those countries? And you can say, well, it looks to me like our best 3 countries because of demand, language, time zone, culture, whatever those requirements are. Then you can say, okay, my top 3 countries are these 3. And then I would go to the next level of market research, competition, potential partners, tariffs. I was on the phone this morning with somebody in Brazil. Brazil has notoriously high import tariffs. They have a very protectionist tariff regime in place for many products that can add 60, 80, 100% to the cost. And so you need to then I would start all of that. Okay.
And just one second question. You were giving us examples of the different certifications and policies in the case of products, but in the case of services, would you say that the analogy will be like the policies of the country, or we will have to check what type of certification will apply depending on the service?
Yeah, so that's going to get to be very country specific as to whether or not you'll need whether you'll need licensing in that country, you know. So then that's where you really need to get into it with a local expert. People that can, you know, people like the World Trade Center can certainly help you in certain cases, or you can go to the U.S. Commercial Service, or you can try to find, you can contact the American Chamber of Commerce in that country. As you move forward, feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to talk with you one-on-one and see if we can help you with some of those questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Going on.
Muchas gracias.
Yeah. All right. So the next question, let's see. At what point do you need an export license, and is there a threshold on sales?
There's not necessarily a threshold on sales, export licensing, and that comes from, by the shout out, that question comes from Danielle Austin of Umpqua Bank. Danielle is one of the nation's experts on what they call documentary payments in international business. So if you ever need to talk to somebody that really knows how to do international payments, Danielle at Umpqua is definitely a fabulous resource. Licensing, export licenses in many cases are about the product being exported, especially things that could be considered sensitive technologies or dual use or military. And then there are different rules that kick in there. And this is part of the whole classification of your product. I know Danielle does a lot on the agricultural side, and there's other documentation that has to go with agricultural exports around phytosanitary and other things, and that is not my area of expertise. The licensing is typically more around technology products and what the government would consider to be sensitive or that could be used for weapons.
Right. Our next question goes to Daniel.
I got a pretty simple question. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for your presentation. I really liked it. But when it comes to the question, it's about starting up. And I'm curious whether you recommend just initially starting to look into being global right away or securing things domestically before I took that step.
That's a really good question.
If the overall.
Yeah. My answer is it depends. If you're designing the product, if the product or service is specifically being designed for an overseas market, if you see a niche in a country or in a region of the world for a specific product or service, then I think your startup is designing to go global immediately. If you have a product that you think has a very strong market acceptance here in the United States and that you can achieve significant growth in the United States, I would start domestically and develop revenue, get your feet wet, get solid. And what I look for is, I call it, you know, the product, people, process, and profit, okay? So do they have a product or a service that's viable to export? Do they have internal processes? Do they know how to build the thing repeatedly? Do they know how to sell, customer service, everything else? Do they have profit, money to invest in international expansion? And then the last thing is people, and that's really that strategic commitment to going global, right? And so, so it depends on what your target is, but it may make more sense to start domestically and then expand.
Great answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
All righty. Our next question goes to Mel. I don't know if you want to share the context and kind of just read the question that you threw in the chat. All right, then I'll bring it in. Mel is planning to import sustainable products like bags to the Philippines. However, the shipping costs of sending sample products to the US is so expensive compared to shipping costs from China. What would you recommend? And if you get many orders, might you ship via boat shipping or other logistics?
Okay, so sending sample products to the US. If you're talking about small quantities of sample products, you're probably talking about an air courier service, and there's not a huge amount. If you start talking about moving container loads of product into the United States, then I think you really need to focus on working with a good freight forwarder or logistics companies. And developing relationships. And then right now, one of the things to just know that right now, shipping costs are just crazy worldwide right now because of the pandemic. And that's not going to change for in the next few months. I think we're going to be living with these crazy international freight costs throughout this year, probably into next year. Mel, if you want to contact me separately offline, I can connect you to a couple of good freight forwarders, logistics companies, and then we can talk through a little bit more about getting samples into the United States. There also may be some ways that you can have them declare that on the commercial invoice in case the duties and the taxes are part of the issue.
Mel says, thank you. Next question, comment goes to Robert.
Hi, I hope you come in here, Kevin. Thanks for the presentation. One of the things that we built a prototype product that can plug into any grid on the planet, automatically recognize where it's going. And one of the things in our communications with our team of developers come from all over the world, India, Turkey, people I worked in the past. But one of the things for people that we're looking to do is we don't just want to build a product and then ship it everywhere. We want to have a product strategy where the components can be sourced within the country, can be assembled within the country, can be supported within the country, so that we're creating a sustainable small business entrepreneurship within those countries. It's a little bit different business model, but if you have something that's kind of product oriented, I think to the other attendees, if you can find a way to generate jobs and income and things, not just selling something within those countries, then you'll find a lot of the country's economic business development teams and other people that will assist you in doing that. Just kind of a question, comment, but I'd like to get your comment back on that too, Kevin.
So when I was in the ed tech industry, we actually had a number of projects. We never executed on them. There was one for the country of Argentina, another one in Turkey. We actually did do some finished manufacturing in Turkey as part of a project, certainly Brazil. The idea of really what you're talking about is I would call it capacity transfer. And that's certainly at governmental levels, ministries of economy, ministries of education can be a very attractive model. Like I say, in our particular case, in the ed tech industry, we just were never able to get there from here. But I think it's a very interesting concept.
Thank you.
All right, we got about 5 minutes left. If there's any remaining questions or thoughts. As you're thinking of questions, I'm throwing some links into the chat. One is a program that we're running with the Capital Region Small Business Development Center called the Lean Innovator Series. It's a 10-week long incubator program. We also threw in the World Trade Center NorCal website. So if you want to check out their resources, additionally, Mentor Sacramento, a free mentoring platform. And then if you're here for Soul Leadership Initiative, that's a sign-in sheet. So hopefully I've bought a few seconds here for you to think of any last questions that might have come up.
Yeah, and I'll just also throw a shout out for the SBDC Small Business Development Center that Cameron was talking about. There's a lot of really good resources if you're a small business, a startup, need another avenue for talking to people. Definitely worth considering reaching out to them.
And your tax dollars have paid for those resources through the SBA, so Small Business Administration. All right. Well, if there's no further questions, want to say thank you, Kevin, for coming in and sharing your experience and expertise in this space. Looks like Daniel's got a question. So there we go. We bought just enough time. So take it away with another question.
My question is about the Lean Innovator Series. What the link that you posted is an application?
Yeah. So the link that I shared is it's a landing page for the program that shares a little bit more about it. There is an application to get into the cohort. So we will have 12 to 14 seats in that cohort. It's a 10-week long program where we help you understand your customer value proposition and design some collateral and actually getting your offering out into the market. And so we will be meeting twice a week for an hour and a half each day. So yeah, it's a great way to connect a community and push your business forward. So thank you for asking that question.
Okay, I think I've already put in the application for that.
Terrific. Yeah. So applications close on the 16th. So we'll be reaching out after. Awesome. Cool. We did have one last question, and that will be our last one from Marina. Sorry. Do you provide any guidance for global social impact startup from Europe relevant to the U.S. market and investors? We currently don't. I don't know if the World Trade Center does. One recommendation is looking at the Miller Center at Santa Clara. They have the Global Building Initiative or something like that. It's a great resource. So I can just check in the Miller Center at Santa Clara.
Yeah, and then you might also look into the B Corp community out of the Bay Area. That might be another place to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Kevin, and thank you all for being here. If you do want to connect, Kevin shared his email in the chat, and then there's also their website, and you're more than welcome to reach out to me. You should have received an email from me with the Zoom link earlier today. So thank you for being here, and we'll be sharing the recording as well as the PDF version of the session. So thank you again, and have a great rest of your Wednesday. And thank you, Kevin. Appreciate all your work.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
All righty. Bye-bye.